guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video. Also welcome back to Vlogmas. In today's video I'm gonna talk about some pros and cons of software engineering. Just to give you a bit of context, I'm a software engineer at Bloomberg in London and I've been on this job for 2 years. Anyway, let's start with the pros. I'll start with the super obvious one, which is salary, benefits, perks, all that stuff. I think software engineering is generally very famous for how good the salaries are compared to other professions. Of course, this all depends on the company, the location, the economic crisis at the time. I feel like this is a bit of an ironic time to be speaking about this, but generally speaking, on the grand scheme of things, software engineering is a very well-paid profession and it comes with a lot of benefits, perks, snacks, coffee. You can't really be mad about that. Number 2 on the list is opportunity slash job security. Again, a little bit of an ironic time to be speaking about this, but let's just say in general. Let's ignore the world falling apart right now. There's so many jobs for software engineering, both in tech companies, but also companies that might not actually be tech companies themselves, but they use tech. And in this day and age, any company uses tech, which creates so many job opportunities. As long as you're doing the right thing and keeping your skills up to par, I'd say you'd always have options, you'd always have opportunities, and you always be able to find a job. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's more difficult, but for software engineer to not be able to find a job at all, I think is pretty difficult. Number 3, there's so many different paths slash subfields into software engineering. Software engineering is a very broad term and there are a lot of subfields that you can specialize in. For example, web development or mobile development or infrastructure, or you can be purely backend, you can do front-end stuff, you can do database stuff, you can go into data science slash machine learning, which is still very related to software engineering, although they're quite different at the same time. But the point is you can branch out in so many directions and you can switch from one to another if you get bored or if you're feeling like you want a new challenge. You as a software engineer have so many options, like there's so many directions you can go into, and I think that's pretty exciting and it's a really good thing to have available. Next one, I think we're at number 4, but I'm not sure. Anyway, flexibility, working from home, that sort of thing. I think a lot of other areas in life have that as a thing, or at least it's a lot more common than it used to be before COVID. But if you look at the big picture, I still think that software engineering definitely is excelling in that area. Different companies have different policies. I feel like I need to give this disclaimer all the time, like different companies are different, even though it's kind of obvious. I think most software engineers have the option to work remotely now, or at least have a hybrid situation going on, which is my case, by the way. So I have 3 days in the office and 2 days from home, and it's not super strict. As long as most weeks you follow that, it's fine. I really love having that flexibility. I actually go to the office quite a bit right now. I go pretty much every day, but I really like having the option not to. It also gives me the option to travel and work, for example, within the UK, very easy. I can also work from abroad for a limited amount of time, and for someone who's coming from a different country and has family in a different country, or different countries, I gotta say, that's very handy. Because for example, when I go home to Bulgaria to see my parents, I don't want to take all of my holiday days there because I don't need them. My friends there work, my parents work, also I don't need to do a lot of sightseeing in the city that I've spent 18-19 years. I really love having the flexibility to just work from there, for example, or work from the UK, or work from home, or go to the office. Like, that's the point. You can kind of do whatever. The important bit is that you have options, and I really love that. I really like that freedom. Next one is you have direct impact on people. It depends on what product you're working on and exactly what you're developing, but usually whatever you're writing, like whatever code you're writing, you get to see it in real life. You get to see people interacting with it in one form or another, sometimes directly, sometimes maybe indirectly, but you get to see your work impacting people. I think that's really, really cool. For example, I'm a mobile developer. I work on Bloomberg Assistant Messenger, and all of my friends, for example, use the application that I write, which is pretty cool. And not just my friends, by the way, generally people who use Bloomberg. But the point is that whatever I write or build, I get to see people use it in real life almost immediately, which is really rewarding. I really like that. Last pro, and I've left that for the end because I think that can be a pro or a con, and it really depends on the person. For me, it's definitely a pro, is that you're always learning. So whatever you're using right now, in 2, 3, 5 years, whatever, it might be completely relevant. There are constantly new frameworks popping up, existing frameworks, existing languages or libraries, etc. They come up with new versions, things get deprecated, they come up with new stuff that you have to learn. It's constantly evolving. There are trends, there are micro trends, there's so much that is constantly shifting and moving. For me, that's super exciting, because the last thing that I want for myself is to be bored of a job. Like, that to me is probably the worst thing a job can be, is just being the same every day. So for me, this kind of dynamic situation is really good because I feel like I'm never truly bored. I mean, maybe on a particular day, but on the grand scheme of things, things are always interesting and always moving, and that's something that I really like. But other people might not like the fact that, for example, they spend so much time learning a language or a framework, become really good at it, and then 2 years later that gets replaced by something else, or the trend is over, everyone hates that, everyone's moving on to something else, you have to start over, you have to learn it. Even though oftentimes the fundamentals, the underlying principles are the same, there's still a lot of specifics to each framework, to each language. So it might be annoying, it might be something that you love, it really depends. For me personally, that's a definite pro. We can move on to the cons. It was actually pretty difficult to come up with this list because, believe it or not, I love my job so much. It sounds super cringe, but I actually do love my job. Coming up with a list of cons, which are not silly, like, I don't know, I don't want to get up in the morning sometimes. It was not an easy task, but I managed to gather a few items, so we can go through them. Number one, sitting all day. I don't like that. And I guess that's the case for many office jobs. I'm a very active person. I get super restless if I don't move around, and I get very bored when I have to sit in the same spot all the time. Now that I'm going to the office every day, this is not that bad because I get to move a lot, and our pantry slash cafeteria, whatever you want to call it, it's on the 6th floor and I work on the 2nd floor, and there's a really long way up there because our staircase is not straight or like a straight spiral. It's like super irregular. It goes, I don't know how to explain this, I don't have words.
So basically it's super flat, like the incline is very flat compared to a normal staircase, but for that to happen obviously it needs to be longer so that it's not as steep, if that makes sense.
Point is, I get a lot of steps in just from going to my desk to get coffee, get some tea, get a snack, anything like that. I get to move quite a bit in that sense. Sometimes when I get super bored of sitting at my desk, I just get my laptop and go and work from another area in the office, either in the cafeteria. Sometimes I go to a common area. It's not that bad, but you have to make an effort to kind of mitigate this, because for me sitting all day is just killing me, both physically and mentally. It just kills my soul, so I don't like that. Number two, it's very competitive. Even though I said there are always opportunities, and they are, if you want to go into the very best companies, it's extremely competitive. There are a lot of opportunities for software developers, but there are also a lot of software engineers, and currently it's such a popular profession to go into. It's such a popular field. So many people go to study and graduate with that. So many people are switching from other fields to software engineering, which is great, by the way. It brings a lot more diversity, but when you're looking for jobs, it can be very stressful, especially if you're trying to get into the top companies, because it's super competitive. The interviewing process is super long for a lot of these companies. Also, I don't necessarily like the interviewing style that's kind of adopted by most tech companies, but that's a topic for another video. Number three, it's a bit of a weird one. I don't know exactly how to explain it. I call it ego programmers. Sometimes you have to deal with people who have turned coding into their entire life, their entire personality, their entire everything. If they're trying to just flex on you and just trying to prove to everyone how they're the smartest, the best ones ever, and their ego comes into that a lot, then it's not really pleasant. Fortunately for me, I don't have to deal with anything like that right now, but I've had to deal with certain people who are like this in my past. But I guess you kind of get assholes whatever job or field you're into, so it's just one of those things. Number four, legacy systems slash legacy code. I think it's fair to say that no one really likes dealing with legacy code, especially if it's something super old and brittle. Again, I'm very fortunate not to have to deal with that right now, but generally speaking, no one likes dealing with code that's 20-30 years old and breaks whenever you touch it or even breathe around it. And number five is that software engineering is not always the most social environment, and again, it really depends on the company and the team you're into. It just depends. You just need to find the right fit for you, the right team for you in terms of culture, atmosphere, etc. You might work with people who are not very outgoing, who are not very social. I think it's kind of tough if you're a young person just starting out, trying to build a network, especially if you've moved to a new city or a new country. And if you happen to be surrounded by people who are not super outgoing or social, that can make things a bit more tough for you. On the other hand, if you're kind of not feeling very social, that could be a good thing. So I guess it depends. I thought I'd put it on the list because I was kind of struggling to come up with even five. So yeah, here we are. I think this concludes this video. I'd love to see more opinions on this or more items for the pros and the cons. So let me know in the comments what are your thoughts. Other than that, I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.